I know nothing is supreme knowledge. This is not what we have been taught in the school, society. All is based on mind knowledge, thinking. But we have not been taught that this mind knowledge is a child of another higher knowledge, which is consciousness itself. Our primal nature, which is not dividing things in good, bad, low and high, pain and pleasure. So the individual mind cannot do otherwise than to try to understand things through this relative knowledge. So we are used to function like that, and that's not easy to let go of that low kind of knowledge and to realize that this individual I cannot know our real nature as consciousness, our real self. So I know nothing can sound stupid. I don't want to be stupid because the mind wants to be clever and think there is nothing more than the mind. So I don't want to disappear, to let space for something which is much bigger, which is consciousness itself. So I know nothing means to ignore, to learn to ignore the mind, to not listen to the mind, especially the mind which is conditioned, which is full of wounds, blockage and all these things, and to learn from a place, a spontaneous place, which is where life is happening on its own, and we don't need to take support of the mind as much as we do. We can learn to use the mind in a practical way when required, but more than 95% of our thoughts are irrelevant. We make plans, and how many of them happens? Very little. So most of the use of the mind is useless, and it's also used to criticize others, to judge our own self, to judge the world. More than 95% probably is like that. So to learn to be more mindful, to observe the mind and the thinking mind, and to see how much is irrelevant in my life, in my own head, and to let go of that, to not listen. We don't need to fight, to destroy, to kill the mind, just to learn to ignore it. Like there is clouds, there is birds, whatever happen in the sky. So same in the sky, in our head, we can let the thought come and go and learn to not take them, especially not to jump into them, like we take a clothes, a jacket, and we do the same with our thought. I think. The thought come and we say, I think that. So to see this subtle movement of I who is jumping into a thought and identify with it. So to learn to step back from that, we can, of course, take some time to sit quietly, to meditate, and to just watch at the mind as if it is a white screen, and all the thoughts are just coming on the screen, and just look at them in a compassionate way, loving consciousness, just being present to to whatever happens, and just learn to just use a practical mind when required. And then life is flowing much more freely and better, and whatever work we have to do in the world, which will be more smooth, more effective, more focused, because we don't lose energy in this more than 95% useless thinking. So I know nothing is supreme knowledge, because it brings us, when I become more humble and even see is seen as non-existence, then consciousness is the supreme knowledge, because it is the mother of the mind and the mind plane and the lower planes. So before these three bodies, physical, astral, causal, the mind, or created consciousness, I am, is always, because it is prior to this plane of time and space where the three bodies are living. And consciousness, which is not somewhere else, which is absolutely here and now, beyond time and space, is a subtle power which is giving life to all these bodies, to all what is happening on this plane. So the more we're aware to be that subtle power, which is just aware, then things are very free. And there is space also in our mind, space in our heart, in the body. Consciousness can be seen as a space, much more space than we are used to living in a contracted individual experience. So to realize that is a part of an expansion of consciousness, which is also an experience, because primal consciousness is not even in this movement of contraction and expansion, but to understand and to at the same time allow this shift from individual consciousness to a much more expanded consciousness, and at the same time being aware of the ground of being, which is our absolute nature, which is witnessing all this play. So knowledge of the mind is very limited. You can use it but not be a slave of it. That's what has happened. We have been identified with the mind, with the body mind, and we think it is our self. But our self is much more than that. It's an experience of contraction of consciousness as an individual. But to take this as the only reality make our life miserable and make us suffer, because we depend on all happening which is made of change. And inevitably we depend on outer object and our own conditioning, thinking. So to realize that this slavery is because we identify with the body-mind. So the goal is just learn to step back and watch at the mind play, be more mindful as witness consciousness, and let life play. And then there is not this tendency to control, fear, which is the opposite of our true nature, which is love, faith, trust, that life is always happening for the best, that in truth, from the consciousness point of view, there is no good and bad, nothing is going wrong. Even the apparent wrong is part of the play. So that's why it's so important to realize that we are that space, that loving space consciousness, which allows everything to be without any judgment. So when we fall back into identification, contraction with a character, just observe, be aware, look at the character, his character, and to have just compassion, loving compassion presence, giving space to be as it is, no judgment. And the more we'll be like that, the less we judge this one, the less we judge other one, because it is the same. So I know nothing is the supreme knowledge. And as a famous actor, a French actor, because I'm French, he's called Jean Gabin, and he was saying, all my life I was saying, I know everything, I know that, I know women, I know about power, about money. And in his old age, maybe 80, he said, and now I know that I know nothing. So that was a song that was made in the maybe 80s or 90s. Yes. So I know nothing, and I'm happy. Thank you for listening. Namaste. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel. See you very soon.